we were speaking about, if you recall, the Holy Bible, right? And the Torah, as well as the Holy Quran. And we started out the verse with the verse in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, سَنُرِيهُمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us what? He's saying, look, I'm going to show you my signs in the horizons and within yourself until it becomes apparent and clear to you that I, Allah, am the truth. Right? Is it not enough for you, Allah says, that I bear witness over all things? Notice this part of the verse really is a statement of Allah being unlimited. Think about it. If Allah bears witness over all things, what is Allah saying? He's saying, absolutely, I see everything. Which means He's where? Everywhere. Ahsant, right? So then that means that once I realize this, and remember, logically, Brother Malik, what did we do in the last couple of nights? We proved not only does God exist, but we proved that He is unlimited. We said what? A creator of something is greater than what they create. Therefore, the creator of all of limitation must be greater than limitation, and therefore He is unlimited. Ahsantum, brothers. Jazakumullah. What's your name again? Amjad. Ahsant Amjad. Barakallah. So that means then that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we said, is all perfect. He's everywhere. He's all purposeful. He's all wise. And He is all just. And we said that our purpose truly, first and foremost, is since Allah created us, He has a great right upon us. Greater than the rights that our parents have upon us. Why? Because even though they brought us to this world, who brought them to this world? Allah. Yes? Allah brought their parents and their parents and their parents, which means that everything that Allah gave me, I should be thankful for. So how am I going to thank Him? Right? We said in two ways. One, I can see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala treats His creations, and I have to treat them the same. He's tolerant of them, so I must be tolerant. Right? He's merciful towards them, so I must be merciful. He is the all-perfect, and He created them, therefore they have great worth and value. Therefore I must treat them as such. Right? Even if they're not Muslim. Even if they're not Muslim. Also, a Muslim becomes what? And a human being, really, if he goes through this intellectual process, what happens? He becomes very eco-friendly as well. Right? And I mention this because, unfortunately, in many households I find here in Michigan, people don't recycle. You know, a good Muslim recycles, right? We take care of our environment. It's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gave us such an environment, right? So that means then, what do I need to do? I need to understand my purpose then is one, emulate Allah's akhlaq and His ethical system, right? And never judge anyone, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the judge. He is the ultimate judge, right? Our goal, first and foremost, is to thank Him through our actions. A, this way. B, the second way we said is how? Is to ask Him, oh Allah, there's a necessity for communication, right? A logical necessity. We realize this. You gave us the ability to realize this, and therefore you must communicate with us. So where's the message? Snapchat, IM, send me a message on my Instagram, right? You got to send me some message, old school, Facebook, right? Send me something. Right? So, Discord these days, right? That's a new thing. So Allah, what does He do? He's got to send me a message. So what did we say? We said, all right, so I have to prove that a message is from Allah. And I said the best way to do that is to look at His most important characteristic of being unlimited and being all perfect. Ahsantum. And therefore, based on that, I can do what? I can try to figure out which message is truly from Allah. But first, I have to look outside of my circle and see who are claiming that they have the message of God. And we determined that we have the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims, right? The Jews have the Torah, the Christians have the Bible, and the Muslims have what? The Holy Quran. Ahsan. Now, we covered the first two criteria. We said that the book has to be constant and unchanged because the Creator is constant and unchanged. We covered that one. Agreed? If you agree, say I agree. We also covered the second criterion, and that is that it must have no contradictions or errors in it, right? And we covered that yesterday as well. Agreed? Right? We found that for both of the first and second criteria, that the Bible and the Torah don't meet the first two criteria. Agreed? right? And we said, why? Because the original Torah doesn't exist today. And we found contradictions in the Old Testament, not only within itself, but it contradicts the New Testament as well, right? And we cited the Gospel of Genesis, the very first Gospel of the Bible in the Old Testament, in chapter 7, verse 1, it contradicting chapter 9, verses 20 to 25, right? In which Noah is accused of being drunk. God forbid, right? And of course, we then looked into Proverbs in the Old Testament, and we found that, according to Proverbs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibits us, right? And wine is a mocker, and whomsoever is deceived is unwise, right? And do not be amongst wine bibbers, riotous eaters of flesh, right? Don't even be among them. Don't even be around them. If you see them, avoid them. So how is he going to allow us to even drink? Does that make sense? Right? And then, of course, it biteth like a serpent, and it stingeth like an adder. We said it takes a hold of you, suffocates the life out of you, and it poisons you, right? That's toxic. And our wonderful doctors will tell you that it's toxic to the liver and toxic to the brain. Right? So then I told you, okay, so then we know that there are contradictions then. And we mentioned also in Luke that it mentions about Prophet Yahya alayhi salam, that he was great in the sight of his Lord, and that he neither drank wine nor strong drink, right? So that's a quick review of what we took. And we said that this applies then to all prophets, that they neither drink wine nor strong drink. And we said strong drink is what? Is any alcoholic beverage, right? Okay. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I told you today that we'd speak about coincidence, right, and chaos theory. And in order to speak about coincidence and chaos theory, we have to understand first and foremost the terms that we're using, right? So the term chaos itself, the way that it's used in layman's terms, as we would use it in everyday life, or how the media would use it, right, is to say that something is disorganized. Agreed? If you agree, say I agree, right? So say you enter your child's room, or your mom enters your room, she sees everything's all over the place, she says, this is so chaotic, right? And you know automatically it means that it's disorganized, right? So that's the layman's use of the word chaos. Now that means then, and in media of course, that the way that it's taught to us is that chaos is just disorganization, right? Now when we go to what they try to do, they try to tie chaos with coincidence. Okay? Now let's understand coincidence and the term coincidence. All right? The word coincidence, what does it really mean? It means that an event coincided with another. Agreed? For those of us who know English well, right? Right? So an event coincided with another, either in time or in space. Yes? All right? All right. So is there really randomness in coincidence? If we think of it this way, that it's two events that coincided, right? Let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, I'm Amjad's neighbor, okay? And both of us decide to leave our houses at the same time, on the same day, right? Same time, same day. Except you go left and I go right, okay? And then we bump into each other. Was that random? But it was a coincidence, right? Why was it a coincidence? Because the two events coincided in time and in space. Agreed? If you agree, say I agree. But this coincidence was a result of what? Of human choice. Agreed? Right? So in reality, is it random? It's not random at all, right? I made a conscious choice. Amjad made a conscious choice, right? We left at the same time. He decided to go left. I decided to go right. So then coincidence is not randomness. Is that clear? And the two should not be mixed up, even if they try to mix it up in our minds. Make sense? If it makes sense, say it makes sense. This is a very important concept for us to think about and understand. So next we look at coincidence, let's say chaos as a term. Or actually, let's continue with coincidence, and I'll finish with this and continue tomorrow with chaos. Sounds good? If it sounds good, say it sounds good. Good. All right, so I'll give you a story. This is a very, very simple story, rudimentary story, but it's a great story and you'll remember it, inshallah. So there was this professor in Sydney, okay? And he was supposed to give a keynote speech at a conference. So that morning, he gets up, he gets dressed, he's all ready to go to the conference, but he decides to walk to the conference. Now, his colleagues in the conference waited for him. Half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours passed. Finally, he shows up. Ya Aba Wainak, where have you been? Agha, kuja meri, where have you been? Right? So, what does he say? He says, well, to be honest with you, I decided to walk today. And as I was walking to the conference center, I got to the side of a river. So I sat at the riverbank. I waited and waited, right, until a bunch of twigs came together, coincidentally, randomly, right, to form a raft. As soon as that happened, I got on it, crossed the river, and here I am now. It only took 3 hours. So of course you can imagine they ridiculed him, they made fun of him, okay? They totally made fun of him, right? So he says, really? Okay, so why are you making fun of me? You find that me suggesting that a raft would come together out of coincidence, out of twigs randomly, right, is an impossibility, right, for you. And that's why you ridicule me, right? They said, yes, of course. That's ludicrous. So he said, well, that's interesting. And yet, you want us to believe that this entire universe, with all of its intricate details, with all of the laws of nature, which science has proven that even the slightest change would cause the universe to collapse onto itself. You want us to believe that all of that, the RNA, the DNA, right? All of these intricate details, the quarks, the atoms, that these are all out of coincidence, and yet, right? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You want us to believe that all of this is coincidence. Who should ridicule whom? What you're suggesting is more ridiculous than what I'm suggesting, right? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. My adhan is a bit early. It's 2 minutes early. Right, Doc? Sorry? Yeah. Okay, so, you know, Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, was, of course, an individual who was unlike any other individual. Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, was a thinker, right? He was chosen by Allah. He was purified by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we'll learn about that as we move along, inshallah. How to prove that as well. But Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, is no different than us. He goes through trials and tribulations as well. Remember, we said the best of Allah's creations in the Arabic lecture, right? They have to go through the greatest of calamities and tragedies. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, he went through many in his life. And the last one that he would go through would be on this very eve, the eve of the 19th. The eve of Laylat al-Qadr al-Sughra, the lesser night of Qadr, the lesser eve of Qadr. It is said, brothers and sisters, يقال أن أمير المؤمنين سلام الله عليه, in this night he would break his fast in the house of his daughter Kulthum. يقولون الرواة بأن أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام في هذه الليلة قضى وقته مع ابنته كلثوم وفطر عندها فكان يفطر عند أبنائه في كل ليلة عند أحد منهم. Every night the Imam salamullahi alayhi would spend one night in iftar with one of his kids. That night was the night of Kulthum. كلثوم أتت إليه بطبق فيه إدامين من الطعام فنظر إليها وقال لها يا ابنتي أتريدين أن يطول وقوفي أمام الله. So his daughter brought him a plate that had 2 types of food in it. He looked at her and said, no, my dear daughter, do you want me to spend a long time on the day of judgment in front of Allah? Take one of these plates. Take one of these plates and leave it aside. She took the yogurt and she put it aside. And he kept khubz al-sha'ir, barley bread to eat. Salamullahi alayka ya Abul Hasan. يقال أن في هذه الليلة قضاها أمير المؤمنين يمشي يمينا وشمالا ويقول والله هي الليلة. They would say that on this night he would walk back and forth and he would say, I swear by Allah, this is the night. هذه الليلة التي تخضب هذه اللحية بدمائي هذه هي الليلة التي وعدني بها رسول الله. This is the night that my beard will be drenched in its own blood. This is the night that the Holy Prophet had promised me. This is the night of my martyrdom. They say as the time of Fajr approached, Amir al-Mu'mineen Salamullahi alayhi, after doing his ibadah and his tahajjud, he would do his wudu and he would prepare to go to Masjid al-Kufa. فذهب أمير المؤمنين إلى مسجد الكوفة وفي المسجد رأى أناسا نائمين على الأرض فذهب إليهم ومن ضمنهم. When he went to the mosque of Kufa, he found some people sleeping on the ground. He went up to them. He said, surely it is abhorred by Allah for you to sleep in the masjid. One of these men was Al-Mal'un ibn Muljim. He was hiding his sword that was laced with poison right under his belly so that Amir al-Mu'mineen would not see his sword. They say that Amir al-Mu'mineen went up to his mihrab. He did the adhan. He called people to pray. Amir al-Mu'mineen, after that everyone would congregate behind him. فاجتمع الناس. وقف أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام أمامهم وكبر ثم قرأ ثم ركع ثم هوى إلى السجود. And then Amir al-Mu'mineen, after performing the adhan and the iqamah, he would start the prayer with a takbir. He would recite, then go into ruku', and after that he would go into sujood. And before he would come out of sujood, وقبل أن يرفع رأسه وقف فوق رأسه الملعون عبد الرحمن بن ملجم رفع سيفه. And as Amir al-Mu'mineen was raising his head, behind him directly was Ibn Muljim with his sword raised up in the sky. And before Amir al-Mu'mineen could raise his head, he would be struck by the sword of Ibn Muljim. His head would start bleeding and his face would hit the ground. Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein would gather around him. Imam Hassan would hold his father in his arms. The angels would be heard saying, تهدمت والله أركان الهدى. صاحت الملائكة بهذا القول وناحت النساء وهوى إليه المؤمنين وأمرهم أمير المؤمنين بأن يغلقوا أبواب المسجد حتى لا يهرب الملعون. وإذا بالحسن والحسين عند أمير المؤمنين. They were next to their father, holding him, caressing him and crying over him as he bled profusely, drenching his beard. هل من منادي ينادي وعليا ومظلوما وشهيدا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Surely we are from Allah and to He we shall return. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل بيت رسول الله إلى أي منقلب ينقلبون. And surely those who oppress the holy household of Allah will know what a grave punishment they shall receive. وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. O Allah, we ask you and beseech you that you accept what little we offered in this night, that you allow us to be of those who will be the servants of Imam al-Hujjah salamullahi alayhi. And surely it pleases him to see us commemorating the martyrdom of his grandfather Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi. O Allah, allow us on this night to do all of the deeds that you ask of us, to change our upcoming future, to make the dua for our brothers and our sisters, to relieve the pressure and oppression upon those who are all oppressed in this world. by all of the dictators and all of the oppressive governments. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, siyama Palestine and Lebanon and Afghanistan and Pakistan and every single country that there is out there in which there are mu'mineen that are oppressed. Ya Arhamar Rahimin. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين والفاتحة على أرواح المرحومين مسبوقة مشروعة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.